I'm Femi OK and you're in the stream. Today, Yemen is in turmoil. The Houthis, Hadi, we'll sort through Yemen's political haze in just a moment. If you've been watching Al Jazeera's news, you can't have missed Yemen in the news over the last couple of weeks. We are going to unpack some of that news and see if we can make more sense of it, and it's really happening almost as I speak. Malika Bilal, digital producer of the stream, what's happening online?
Well, people are asking questions from all around the world, and this is actually a pitch that we got several times on Facebook and in Twitter. This is what one of those pitches look like. This is via Twitter. Abdo says, big demonstrations in several cities of Yemen against the Houthi. So we'll get into that. We can't do it without you though, so tweet us your questions, your comments with hashtag AJStream.
I'm also joined right here in the studio by Mohammed Al-Basha, and he is the spokesman for the Yemeni embassy. He's right here in Washington. It's great to have you here, Mohammed.
It's a pleasure. And
also, if you want to be part of this conversation, you want to be in the stream, you can do that by heading across to Facebook. I have the Facebook page up here, facebook.com/AJStream. You can send us comments, scroll down here. You can comment on today's show, any other shows, and suggest stories that you would like to see us covering. Yemen is in limbo. Last week, President Abed Rabu Mansour Hadi resigned after Houthi fighters stormed the palace following a dispute over the constitution. But how did the country get to this point? Well, last January, the National Dialogue Conference wrapped up after agreeing on the format of a new constitution. The country was to become a federation of 6 states as part of its political transition. Now, all the way through to 2014, anti-government protests continued, mainly led by Houthis, as sporadic violence dotted the country. Until September, Houthis were mainly an obscure Shia group from the north. The turning point, though, was when their fighters took control of the capital, Sanaa, forcing the United Nations to negotiate a peace deal between them and the Hadi government. So we're going to unravel everything that's been happening in Yemen with our guest today, or we will try and do as much as we can in half an hour. From Sanaa, Yemen, we have Hussein Al-Bukaiti. He is a pro-Houthi activist. In Baltimore, Laura Kazinoff is a journalist who's written extensively about Yemen. And also in Sanaa, Hisham Al-Omaisi is a political activist. So great to have you all here. Mohammed, you are the spokesman for the Yemeni embassy. Who do you work for right now?
Right now,
who's your boss?
We have a charge of the affairs here in Washington, D.C., so I report directly to him, and he reports directly to the acting foreign minister, who's the vice minister in Sanaa. So
there's an administration still in Yemen today in charge. Somebody's in charge.
Yes, there's a lot of misperception about the situation. A lot of people feel that there's a collapse of the state. The government is functioning to the best of its ability. We're able to provide basic services. Treasury Department yesterday issued a statement that they're going to be able to pay paychecks. Security incidents are not as widely reported.
So they issued a statement, but can they really, I mean, you can do statements, but can you really pay salaries?
I think they're going to be able to pay for the month of January, the salaries for sure.
Wow, that's till the end of what, this week?
Yes.
And then what?
And then hopefully we're going to be focused again on the economic crisis, on the humanitarian situation, and we'll overcome this political crisis at this point.
Hussein is sitting there in Sanaa, in the capital of Yemen. Hussein, could you give us a flavour of what the atmosphere is like right now, just going about daily life? Is that possible?
Actually, now the atmosphere is much calmer than before, and people in the street, I mean, they haven't noticed, I mean, it's no different on the street between when Hadi and the government was still in charge or now. The only difference we have less government troop in the street, and as well less popular committees fighter, which is formed mainly by Ansarullah the Houthi. So people are thinking it's no different than it was before. It just they seen less guns on the street.
Well, Hisham, you heard Hussein say that things are calmer and there's fewer guns in the streets, but we are hearing a slightly different story online. And so I'd like your thoughts on this. This is in Aden. This is South Voice tweets us, children are afraid of going to schools alone. Shooting and random bullets hit the educational buildings. And of course, that's in the south of Yemen. But this is someone in Sanaa, and he says, I have to check if it's safe around my university before going out every morning and if it's safe to come back home. So Hisham, what is it like where you are? Do you have to check your safety surroundings like this person was saying?
See, here's the thing. It depends where you live and what area you want to visit in Sanaa. Some areas are much more peaceful than other areas. For the person that's at the university and its surroundings aren't safe, it's because most of the protests happen near the university, which is why there are a lot of gunmen there and some unrest and instability in that area. However, in areas like north of the capital, downtown, it's pretty much safe and calm.
If I just show everybody, this is a map from the Daily Cause, and it sort of breaks down what's happening in Yemen. Mohammed, you can help me update it, and guess you can as well. Anywhere that's orange here, areas affected by civil war. Sanaa, the capital, is here. And then we have Yemen just south of Saudi Arabia. If you see these red lines here, this is Al-Qaeda activity. And then areas affected by civil war up there. And then we have areas seeking independence. It does feel like there's a lot of stuff happening, Mohammed, around Yemen that's causing instability. Even if people, as Hussein is saying, they're going about their daily life, fewer guns, he says, but there's a feeling of uncertainness looking at this map. Is this map realistic?
I think the silent majority in Yemen are called the silent majority. We don't hear much their voice. We don't hear much their concerns. I would like to share a personal experience when I spoke to my 4-year-old niece 2 days ago, and she told me, Uncle, I want you to tell grandfather to tell them to stop the explosions.
Oh, now where does she live?
She lives in the downtown area close to a very safe neighborhood, but the explosions are heard time in, time out.
Sure.
I think Yemen is a divided house. We have an array of problems that are entangled, deeply rooted, water scarcity, humanitarian crisis, economic crisis. We have a security challenge with Al-Qaeda and other militant groups, and we have the secessionist movement.
Mohammed, you sound weary just listing those things one after another after another. If you're living in Yemen, is that weariness reflected in real life there too? You told me about your niece. Is there weariness there, or is that this is just life?
People are resilient. We're not giving Yemenis much credit, but Yemenis are resilient. If you put all this complex difficulties in a box in another country, perhaps things would have erupted in civil war years before, but we have, I think, a social and a tribal and a family-based structure that acts kind of like a handbrake when things are about to explode. It pulls up and we're able to sit back.
Is the handbrake on right now? Where are we? Are we free rolling
morning,
down the hill?
I was very concerned this morning about how the things were going. On my way to the studio, I got updates that we're having all the political parties, as we speak right now, sitting together, talking at a secured location with the UN envoy, Jamal bin Omar, and it seems that we are heading towards the presidential council proposal that they've been talking about. So I think within the next 48 hours, 24 to 48 hours, we're going to hear good news. So, and I think Yemenis' wisdom again prevailed, but I hope this time this will stick and we'll be able to implement. We signed a lot of deals, we form a lot of committees. We have a problem with implementations. Go ahead, Hisham.
I just wanted to say one thing. We've had multiple deals in the past. We've had multiple proposals in the past. A meeting with politicians, with Jamal bin Omar, with the Houthis, with different political factions, but the deals don't last. At face value, even if they sign whatever proposal they have, within a few weeks, it's quite apparent to everybody that they're not sticking to the clauses of the deal, specifically the Houthis, who are the main power player. They would sign anything in document, but at the end of the day, it's ink on paper. They have different plans. They want to expand all over Yemen. They don't want any competitors. They don't want anybody to sound like they're wrong, to dictate their own opinions. So honestly, it's a total waste of time. meeting politicians, Jamal bin Umar, and whatever proposal or meeting they're coming up with, it's a waste of time.
Sorry, but it's not, as you said, the Houthi, they are like to blame because they sign and they don't implement anything. If you see, after the national dialogue, who didn't implement the national dialogue agreement? It was the government. It was passed into a government. It was President Hadi. It was Ali Muhsin al-Ahmar, which was the head of the 1st Armored Division. It was the Islahi party who refused to implement the national dialogue, and its first article, which says there must be a government of partnership.
All right, so Hussein, so you are blaming the current administration for failing to implement this transition.
Exactly.
All right, so I'm just going to keep it brief there for a moment because I know Laura was trying to get in. Laura, what did you want to add?
No, I was just going to add a comment regarding when Mohammed was talking about Yemen being a failed state or not, and that there's some misreporting. The truth is that the government broke down, or the president stepped down, his entire cabinet stepped down, and Yemenis didn't really feel anything or much of a change in the absence of whether or not a civil war is going to happen. They don't feel anything without a government. That means their government wasn't really had no power to begin with and wasn't doing anything to begin with. Also, I mean, the government has no monopoly on the use of force. I mean, there's these multiple things that define what is a failed state, and it seems very clear that Yemen is a failed state. And in regard to Hussein's, all these, everyone's name blaming, this group or this group or this group. I mean, part of the problem in the past couple years in Yemen has been that every single political faction has tried to fill the vacuum that Saleh left behind when he left power.
And he was the former president who was pushed out due to the Yemeni revolution. That was back in 2011. All right, Laura, take a breath for a moment because the international community also want to join in this conversation. Malika.
Well, picking up on something that Mohammed mentioned earlier about the silent majority, and Hisham, we got this tweet. It's a question. This is Shamsuddin, and he says, what are the roles of people who don't necessarily support the government or any armed groups? And of course, that would also take into account the Houthis. So, Hisham, I know you went to a pro-Houthi rally. You also went to an anti-Houthi rally. So this is you that this person is talking about. What are people in your position feeling right now?
Well, I'm just going to take it from where Hussein dropped it, saying that the government was basically inept, and hence the Houthis took over the cities. I'm actually one of the people who actually supported that. We're very happy to see a government that was basically ineffective go, and I cheered for the Houthis coming in, taking in the different places inside the capital, removing the current government, Ali Muhsin, Al-Ahmars, all the different people. But, and a big but here, when the Houthis start using heavy hand, when they start spreading popular committees with guns did not disappear from the cities, guns are in the cities, and Houthi patrols are around the capital. When they start dictating our way of life, it becomes very irritating. Yeah. I was blocked from coming into my home a couple of days ago by Houthis who've cordoned the street. I tried to explain to them that my house was 20 meters away. I need a right of passage. They wouldn't hear of it. They basically wouldn't hear of it. And the guy waved his AK-47 in my face. That kind of attitude we cannot accept. We cheered for the Houthis toppling an inept government, but that does not mean that we'll be submissive to them changing one dictator for another.
Hussein.
Exactly. But if you think about why the Popular Committee has taken to the street of Sana'a, when the war in 2014 broke out between Ansarullah, the Houthis, and Ali Muhsin, then when Ali Muhsin was defeated and he fled away to Saudi Arabia, there was no war between Ansarullah, the Houthis, and the government itself or its forces. It was between them and Ali Muhsin, who has refused a presidential order.
Hussein, I'm going to ask you to slow down for a second because Hussein, I'm going to ask you for 1 second, if I may. Hisham said he wanted to get home, a gun was waved in his face. Let's make this about people who are living right now in Sanaa and not be talking about something that's happened a little bit further back, because he asked you something brought out something very directly. An AK-47 in his face. Why would that happen? I know you support the Houthis. How do you explain that?
I would explain that. I mean, that's the vacuum when the troops has left. then the people on the street of Sana'a has formed popular committee. They're not like exactly a Houthi fighter who entered the.
So you're saying this person that waved the gun was not a Houthi?
It could be like them saying it could be a popular committee for protecting the street. Hisham himself, I think he posted on Twitter a week ago. He got a chance to join the popular committee, and he was serving at a checkpoint. So that's what I'm saying.
Yes,
because who created this? That people took to the street who maybe have no experience. They're not well trained. They're not the government. We have to look to the not to the reaction. We have to look to the action. What caused this? Why
here's the thing.
As they call militia, are in control of the street?
But Hussein, what about the kidnapping of journalists at protests and things like that? I mean, how do you explain that sort of behavior from Houthis?
Everybody have the right to protest, and everybody have the right to freedom of speech. That's what I'm saying. I cannot be like with any kidnapping or arresting of any journalist. But still, all this was caused is by the government and the President Hadi that we have reached this situation that we have now. We can't just say now the Houthi are in the street are to blame.
All right, guess just take a pause for a moment. Mohammed, let me go back to the community, and then I'll bring you in, because they also are eager to be part of this. Malika, go ahead.
They're shifting the conversation just a little bit towards people that are involved in the Yemeni struggle, for better or for worse. So Mohammed, we got this tweet from Noon Arabia. She says the best case scenario was to allow the change that we demanded in 2011 during the uprising, to allow that to happen without any foreign intervention. But we are where we are. Stephen writes in about that intervention. He says these were foolish games of coercion at gunpoint, and they derailed the transition plan that we've talked about on previous shows here on this stream. Foreign intervention, in your view, who's doing the most intervening?
I subscribe to the theory that the problems we have in Yemen are problems that, first and foremost, the Yemenis have developed over the years. These are historical problems. This is not something that happened in 2011 or yesterday or years before, and this is old historical problems. The Houthis are a component of the Yemeni society. They're not foreigners or aliens that just came out from outer space. They're part of our society. But I think that my advice to the Houthis is two things. One, not a single group in the history of Yemen was able to rule the nation by themselves. Two, you have the right to express all sort of opinions. You have the right to practice whatever you want to practice. But the use of violence and force to attain and get political gains is simply unacceptable. Yes, there was a security vacuum because some of the troops and the military forces were attacked. That's why they were pushed out. But this hopefully will be discussed more in a historical perspective. I'm more of a person who looks to the future. We've wasted enough time talking about the past, enough time talking about what went wrong, what's happening wrong. I think we need to look, especially my generation, the youth, we need to look at the future. 26 million Yemenis, 60% of that are under the age of 24. So my generation, in a matter of time, will be responsible with running the country. We are a divided house, but I think we need to form a common ground for us to move forward. Otherwise, we're going to end up in a very bad place.
I mean, Mohammed, you make a good point, because you bring this whole story back to the people. Let me bring in Laura, who spent time in Yemen. Laura, about 14 million people right now are in need of humanitarian aid in Yemen. Can you give us an idea of how difficult, how challenging life is in Yemen? Even access to water is difficult, healthcare is difficult. Bring us back down to sometimes beyond politics and how people are really living.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that always struck me when I was in Yemen is something that Mohammed touched on earlier, which is the resiliency of Yemenis. And so they don't have electricity, they don't have any services from the government whatsoever. The only services they're receiving are from their sheikhs, their tribal leaders. And yet they somehow still manage to eke out a living via sharing, via social structures. And so sometimes it's hard to gauge how bad the situation really is, because people just sort of put a smile on their faces and try their best and move on. But certainly, I mean, it's also kind of hard to see because it's outside of the cities where you have some of the worst poverty. And so especially, you know, the main power actors are all in Sanaa, the capital, and the situation is certainly worse in these villages where, you know, there's no schools, you have malnutrition rates on the rise. And that situation is just, there's no signs that it's going to get better, particularly given the current political situation.
People have actually been tweeting us from Yemen, which is pretty phenomenal that they're able to do that. Malika, what are you seeing? Well,
there were some people tweeting us before the show that they were lacking electricity, and so there are definitely difficulties to having this conversation with Yemenis on the ground live. But Afrah tweeted us not too long ago, with the skyrocketing unemployment in Yemen, it's ironic that Hadi, the president, and the cabinet joined the club. So that's a little bit tongue-in-cheek look at that, but Hisham, what she's referencing is that there are soaring levels of unemployment, and this is what people on the ground really are concerned about.
Yes, that is very true. There's huge gaps now growing, but here's the thing: Yemen most of the people didn't really depend on the government, for that matter. The government doesn't really collect taxes and bring it back to the people in the first place. Most of the government funding comes from donors. So coming or going of the government didn't really affect the people. It's not going to affect the people now, it's not going to affect the people tomorrow, not even a 5 or 10 year plan. When the Houthis play on the tune of they're going to improve the situation within the coming few months or 2 years, that's an impossible tasking. That's a wishful thinking. We know it, they know it, but they're playing with the emotions of the people, which is quite fine because everybody understands that the government was quite inept, and we really appreciate it. One thing I just wanted to mention, in regards to the popular committees that our Houthis are waving around, yes, they did ask us to volunteer. Yes, we volunteered. That does not mean that it is legitimate now. Remember, popular committees are subdivided into tier 1s, tier 2s, and tier 3s. Tier 1 popular committees come from Saada. They are the big generals. They control things. They have patrols in the city. Tier 2, they are ad hoc. They come and go. Tier 3 is what is equivalent to neighborhood watches, which is one that I volunteered at, and which is the one that is used to legitimize that, you know what, popular committees are from the people, the normal people from the different cities. So it's not just us Houthis, it's the normal people as well. No, that's a misconception.
Hisham, let me just check in with Hussein at the moment, because Hussein, the Houthis are in a very important position right now in Yemen. What do they want?
I mean, they have repeated this many times. The implementation of the national dialogue, which, as I mentioned before, the government has not taken the Houthis within the government after the national dialogue as it was agreed.
All right.
And then they signed the peace and partnership agreement, and still after that Hadi refused to implement the
all right, so let's not go over old territory here. So what they want the national dialogue implemented. And so they don't want to take, let me just check very carefully, they don't want to take power, they want the current administration to do what's already been agreed to be done. That's simple.
Exactly. If they want to take power, they have taken it in 2014.
All right, let me check
Simple
back.
as that.
Yeah, let me just check back in with our community to see how they're viewing this conversation.
Well, you asked Hussein what the Houthis want. I'm seeing what people want, who are average Yemenis. Mohammed says Yemen needs a change that challenges the people-state relation. People should know that they aren't the subjects, but the source of power.
Right. So we have in this conversation Mohammed Al-Basha, Hussein Al-Bukaiti, Hisham Al-Maisi, and also Laura Kazanov. We are taking them to the post show to talk about Yemen. If you have any questions you want to ask them directly, Malika is sitting here, she's on Twitter, she'll be able to look at your tweet. If it's a really good question, it will make it to the post show. Stream.aljazeera.com, we will see you there. Let me tell you though about Thursday before I head to the post show. Why are some infertile couples in Costa Rica being forced to travel overseas to make their dreams of parenthood a reality? We'll find out on the next AJ stream. Until then, thanks for watching. Hello again, this is the Post Show. We're discussing Yemen. Let's get right back to that conversation. So Hussein, you were saying that the Houthis don't want to take power, they actually just want to push to make sure the constitution is implemented. Did I summarise that correctly?
Not the constitution, the national
dialogue.
Peace and partnership agreement.
All right.
But as we all know, the problem started when they tried to push the sixth region and to force it the sixth region in the constitution, which everybody must know that the sixth region was not agreed at the national dialogue. There is a huge confusion about this. It was not agreed. The Socialist Party has refused it, the Iraqi has refused it, and Ansarullah the Houthi has refused it, and they decided at the national dialogue to form a committee, and on economical standard, geographic standard, they're gonna look, does Yemen need to be a federal state, and it could be 4, 6, 5, 2, as it will be agreed in the future. And that's what sparked the whole problem. All this what we happening now.
Here's my problem. Here's my problem with that rhetoric. To a lot of people, including me, a lot of Yemenis, they don't care about that level of government management. 6 regions, 8 or 20 regions, PMPA, NDC, Constitution. To be honest with you, ask anybody on the street if he cares about the Constitution, or if he knows how many clauses are in the Constitution, or for that matter, what is the plan for the 6 regions. We don't really care about that. What I care about is, what is the Houthi plan for economy? What is the Houthi plan in terms of security? What is the Houthi plan in terms of social welfare? We've heard enough of pinning blame the previous people, the previous regime, on Ali Muhsin, on Hamid al-Ahmad, on the corruption. Seriously, and trust me, we do really appreciate what the Houthis did. They rid us of a lot of corrupt people who a lot of people couldn't previously. That is really appreciated.
I agree with you.
They've sustained a better electricity now.
The answer for that.
Again, they're overplaying this.
The answer for
okay,
that
we appreciate it.
It's the national dialogue. I mean, there is parties. I mean, all Yemenis, the Yemenis, they are themselves divided. They are from Ansarullah, the Houthis, from Islahi, from. That's what makes their leaders go at the national dialogue to talk and then sign the peace and partnership agreement under the provision of the United States.
That's an agreement between the different political elites, not what actually matters to the common folks.
No, but elite and political agreement, that's what will affect the people. They cannot just, the Houthi cannot go and just do what they want, and the Islahi like do.
Well, they've been doing it for the past year.
Yeah, if I may want to jump in.
That's why you have the politician agree about things, and about so the people gonna be affected. They agreed to build the government, then it wasn't built by
Hussein, you've made this point so well. I'm going to stop you for a second so Mohammed can jump in. Go ahead, Mohammed.
I think one of the root causes of this situation that we have right now is mistrust. What happened after the Arab Spring in 2011 is that a lot of former officials started acting in an opposition role, and then the opposition groups continued to act as an opposition. So you have all the political parties involved in the political sphere in Yemen acting as an opposition. So everybody was opposing the other side. Nobody was focusing on managing the country. Nobody was focusing on creating jobs. Nobody was focusing on enhancing security. And this is why we're in this situation today.
Has any infrastructure been built since 2011?
The investment and capital investment structure
I'm sorry I said the word infrastructure. I'm going to like slap my own wrist. Jobs, schools,
capital investments
water,
has been very
anything
low.
important happened since 2011 for real people?
Capital investments has been very low. The government budget has been just focused on paying salaries, and the donors,
whose salaries?
Military salaries, civil servants, and the problem. A lot of people look at the international community and the Friends of Yemen. They're pledged close to $8 billion, but you know, to be a devil's advocate, not just a government official at this point, the international community and the Friends of Yemen and donors couldn't invest on the ground because of the security situation.
All right, so let me just ask you this. 4 years.
Mohammed,
hold on 1 minute. No, I promise I'll come to you. 4 years since the revolution, what's actually happened? In a sentence. You're trying to think of something that's been good for people.
Tough. I think since 2011, we've opened up old wounds.
Wow. All right, Laura, go ahead.
I agree with Mohammed in that last statement he just said. That definitely seems to be the case. But I was going to say one example in the country where there has been some positive change, though for how long now at this point we don't know, is the city of Taz. And why in Taz? I mean, there's many reasons, but one is because they actually have a technocratic a governor who's a technocrat, right? And it's a place where people from different sides actually work together. Islah and GPC work together a little bit in Taz, and it helped a lot. And so it was one example, but otherwise, I mean, it's the only place in the country where anybody from different sides were sort of functioning. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that it did happen, but
I just wanted to add one more thing as well. When Mohammed says that the government has been focusing on paying salaries, here is one thing. There are a lot of ghost employees within the government, ghost employees within the army. So when the government comes back to me with an excuse and saying, you know what, we've been so focused on just paying salaries, barely saying salaries, that's a bogus excuse. You've been spending my money on paying ghost employees. That money goes to sheikhs. That money went to a lot of government officials who've been traveling for the past 2 years all over the world, who've been buying houses, buying cars, armored cars, buying luxury cars. So, and that is exactly why people like me welcome the Houthis to come and topple that inept and corrupt government. It's because of the mismanagement of funds.
And some of those ghost employees were also members of AQ. I mean, truly, which was something that started...
Also members of Laura, do explain it for me. Also members of
Al-Qaeda.
Okay, right. Sorry, I didn't quite hear what you said. Okay.
And this started with the relationship with Salah. And so I wonder why wasn't that one of the first things that was dealt with when the international community poured all this money into Yemen? I mean, because it has to do with the economy. Why was all the money poured into having national dialogue instead of these things that really could have helped the country? And, I don't know.
Yeah, and what they did.
Guess, let me just create a space for a moment, because I want to bring the community in.
Well, Laura, I'm actually so glad that you mentioned AQ, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, because that's exactly what our community wants to talk about. We got several tweets on that point. Particularly, we asked, how should the international community respond to this crisis? Mr. Mohammed writes in, they should send more food and less drone strikes. Anne writes in, is it right for the U.S. to continue with the drone strikes in the absence of a government? Don't we need a more legit strategy? Mohammed, people are angry about these continued drone strikes. We know as of today that they're going to continue, the U.S. is going to continue them. Is it right, as Anne asks?
Al-Qaeda and terrorism has created this sphere in media where everybody is more focused on AQAP and Al-Qaeda and counterterrorism and other issues. And I think that started since 2000 and the Cole bombing, where the story of Yemen moved from foreign editors to national security and defense editors. So this is why there is a lot of coverage on Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is a threat to the Yemeni people. Al-Qaeda, considering that you have 40% unemployment with youth, considering all the economic difficulties and the daunting challenges, they're not able to recruit as they would have able in other countries, because we have the social structure and the tribal structure and the family holding us and binding us together against Al-Qaeda. So drones is just a component of the military aspect of countering Al-Qaeda. It's a kinetic operations. Military and the security solution will never ever solve terrorism or eradicate AQAP. We need to address the socioeconomic and political challenges, to address the deeply rooted causes that brought Al-Qaeda to this position. When it comes to drones,
Al-Qaeda.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, if you've seen, I mean, I might keep talking about the peace and partnership agreement, and one article of the peace and partnership agreement says that the government must protect the people of Al-Bayda from Al-Qaeda, and they must fight Al-Qaeda to protect them. And nothing has happened of that. Over 130 people were targeted, mainly because they are loyal to Ansarullah or close to Ansarullah, and either killed, slaughtered, and burned alive. And the government hasn't done anything. Tribesman has gone to Hadi, has gone to Al-Ahmadi, the head of the national security, has gone to the governor of Al-Bayda. They haven't done anything. They gone to Sayyid Abdul Malik Al-Houthi in Saada, and they asked him to come and help them. They said, you have to clear our city like you did in Saada. And then Ansarullah, the popular committee from Damar, from other area, and as well popular committee was formed from Rada, has gone into Baida. And now you see a lot of people complaining, why did the Houthi come to Rada? They always look to the reaction.
Okay, just before the Hussein, just before the micro in Al Bayda, let's look at the bigger picture. When was the last time Yemen prosecuted and sentenced Al Qaeda member to a death sentence? Never. When was the last time we sentenced somebody from Al Qaeda for more than 10 years? Never. Last year,
because the government was supporting Al Qaeda.
Okay, there's just one thing. There's a big problem with our security and judicial system in the first place. Let's not just blame Al Bayda and the governor of Al Bayda as well, and the PMPA. We have much rampant problems with our security system in the first place. We cannot prosecute or sentence Al Qaeda members because they're connected to strong tribal leaders. So when it comes to drones, that's actually an easy. Just one second. For a drone solution, that was actually an easy way out for the government and the army. It makes it much easier for them to pin it on the drones than take responsibility and accountability for having arrested an Al-Qaeda leader and having to release him within 2 years. And honestly, we have the highest number of prisoner escapees of Al-Qaeda in Yemen.
All right, guess I'm going to make an observation. We could actually have this conversation for 3 hours and we would not be done talking about all of the issues that Yemen has to deal with right now. One of the things I do want to ask you to do, and I'm going to ask you to do it in a sentence because we literally have a minute to finish up this show, is what do you think will happen next? It's always a surprise. Keep following what's happening in Yemen. Hussein, in a sentence, what next?
I think they will come to an agreement, and because the resignation of Hadi was kind of political tactic just to have some consensus of the Houthis, and I'm sure now they knew that Houthi as a revolution and a power and with the popular committee, they will do whatever it takes to implement the national dialogue and the peace agreement.
All right, Hisham, your sentence for what's next is what?
It's going to be a hegemony of the strongest, which is the Houthis. But here's the thing. If he doesn't change his ways, there's going to be a backlash, and we'll see another revolution down the road within 2 years.
Laura, I know journalists aren't supposed to be in the prediction game, but you have a lot of experience in this region. What would you anticipate from where we are right now?
What I learned in Yemen is that whatever happens in Yemen, it happens a lot slower than the West thinks it's going to happen. And that prediction in Yemen are particularly a futile endeavor.
All right, smart woman. Mohammed?
It's difficult to speak after Laura. I think in one line I will say that the people of Yemen will prevail. And whatever happens in the upcoming days will be very crucial to how we're going to end up in the correct path, or things are just going to keep deteriorating. At this point, I'm very optimistic. I'm always optimistic. And I think we should not give up on hope.
Wow. All right. I'm glad you said that, because this is a tough conversation to sit through. Malika, anything from the last thoughts from the community?
Well, you asked that question, and Noon has an answer. She says, I wish I had a crystal ball to answer that question, but nevertheless, I'm hopeful. This is what makes Yemen unique. No matter how things are going so bad, she writes, Yemenis still persevere and hope for the best.
Wow. Mohammed, Hussein, Hisham, Laura, thank you very much for being part of this conversation. Really good to have your time. All right. Moving on, what we'll be doing on Thursday? Well, why are some infertile couples in Costa Rica being forced to travel overseas to make their dreams of parenthood a reality? We'll find out more about that story on the next AJ stream. See you back here soon.